Good morning, everybody. I'm Jerry Hafer with Amac Foundation. I want to spend a few minutes up front here to talk to you about who Amac is and who the Amac Foundation is. As I said, I'm with the Amac Foundation. Amac is affiliated with the Association of Mature American Citizens. And Amac itself is, as the slide says, it's a nonpartisan membership benefits organization and was created in 2007 basically to serve the conservative age 50 plus Americans. Our founder at the time, Dan Weber, felt kind of disillusioned in that seniors' interests in Washington were not being adequately represented. The needs of senior citizens weren't properly being communicated in Washington. So he set about forming AMAC. AMAC has grown tremendously since then. We currently have 2.4 million members, roughly approaching 2.5 million. So it's gotten to be a very large organization. Their website, I don't have the URL up there, but it's amac.us. That's their website to find out more information about AMAC, the rapidly growing information-centered organization. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. Amac Foundation, on the other hand, is AMAC's 501c3 public benefit arm. We are a nonprofit located in Central Florida, North Central Florida. And our primary mission is supporting and educating America's seniors. That's what we do. It's a very simple mission. We do it a couple of different ways, one of which is public seminars like one that we're doing today. And we do those on a variety of topics: Social Security, Medicare, veterans benefits, many topics important to seniors. We regularly poll our seminar attendees for ideas about things that are of interest to seniors, and we present seminars about that, public seminars. We partner with a number of organizations, VITAS, and I'll say more about them in a moment as an example. And we bring subject matter experts into these seminars to deliver material. Again, that's important to seniors. We do, on average, 1 to 2 seminars every month. Last year we did a total of 30. So it's a pretty active program. We also do publications, and we provide information on topics, again, that are important to seniors. We produced a couple of books about Social Security. We published a book a while back called a Who's Who in Social Security for anybody wanting to do research about Social Security. We publish a weekly blog on articles that are important to seniors, health-related items, senior fraud prevention-related items. So every Monday morning at 9 o'clock, there's a new blog that's posted on our website. We also operate 2 topical websites. One is Social Security Report. I should say .org. I'm sorry about that. And MedicareReport.org. Those 2 sites are dedicated specifically to those topics: Social Security and retirement in the first case, and Medicare and healthcare in the second case. And they are updated 5 days a week with breaking news about those topical areas. The Social Security Report site, for example, has a lot of information, background information about Social Security, a lot of tips and things that you need to understand about Social Security. There's a lot of archival information. For example, the trustees' reports about Social Security's finances are stored there and accessible through that site. So those are really information-packed sites. And again, they're updated 5 days a week. Breaking news. Every day we publish at least 5 breaking news articles about Social Security and some of our own material also on the site. Also, we operate a Social Security advisory service. We have on staff 7 trained and accredited advisors who handle questions about Social Security. There's really no place that seniors can go, or people aging into Social Security. There's no place they can really go to get credible information about how the rules apply to their situation. They can go to a field office and fill out forms and that kind of thing. But if they have specific questions about trying to interpret the rules, there's no real place for them to go to get help. And that's what we do. We handle roughly 600 inquiries every month. Just recently, we started this program in 2016, and just recently, the end of November of last year, for example, we hit the 20,000th counseling session that we've conducted since we started in 2016. So again, we're doing about 600 of these a month, where people either email us or call us or walk in with their questions. And a question can be answered in 5 or 10 minutes, or it can be 5 or 10 hours. It just depends how complex their situation is. We basically analyze their situation and interpret the rules for them. This is what, if you make this decision, this is what it means to you, that kind of thing. A very, very active program. And again, we have 7 accredited advisors that have to be reaccredited every 2 years. So we stay current that way. And then finally, the fifth activity that the foundation is involved in is coordination of AMAC's Veterans Outreach projects, which brings us to where we are today. AMAC has had a long history of supporting veterans issues. In fact, of the almost 2.5 million members that AMAC has, fully 31% of them are indeed veterans. And 3/4 of our total membership has some family connection to a veteran. And so AMAC has, as I said, has a long history of supporting veterans issues. And about a year ago, AMAC launched a project called Veterans 2021 project, basically to kind of expand this support of the veterans community. And the foundation was tapped to sort of coordinate that project on behalf of AMAC. And the way that we do that is we have increased our rate of publication on information about veterans causes. We've developed we're in the process of developing a networking project among VSOs, veteran service organizations across the country. And that's an attempt to bring VSOs to the table to talk about programs that they have and share information, really. And so that's underway right now. We also interact specifically with veteran service organizations. And I'll give you an example. There's a small VSO out in Idaho called One More Day Veterans. And we work with them to promote podcasts that they do, promote general information about PTSD and suicide prevention. And so we're very active with them. And Lone Survivor Foundation is another one that we work closely with in terms of helping get the word out about projects that they're undertaking and for example, seminars that they're doing, that kind of thing. So again, we're just trying to help them promote awareness of what they do. And finally, we created a Veterans Program Information Clearinghouse on our website. When you go to our website, amacfoundation.org, there's a button on the menu bar that says For Veterans. And when you click on that, it takes you to a searchable database where if you've heard of a particular program, veterans program, you key in the keyword and it'll come back and give you the information about that program in terms of basically who sponsors it, what it is in summary, and then most importantly, contact information, phone numbers and emails. So that's an extensive database. It's constantly building. I add 8 to 10 entries every week to that as I find out about new programs. So that's going to be something that's going to be continually growing. And there's also news releases specifically affecting veterans that are published in that repository. Also legislative information is going on in Washington that affect veterans. We add that stuff to the database too frequently. So that's pretty much what the AMAC Foundation is and does. Again, we are part of AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens, and we are the 501c3 nonprofit arm. So that's who AMAC is, and that's the end of my, what I guess I would call corporate introduction. So now I want to get into why we're here today. Today's topic is the heart of the veteran, and our speaker, we're partnering with Vitas Healthcare on this. Our speaker is Ben Mongiovi. And I'm going to say a little bit about him, but before I do that, let me say a little bit about Vitas in case you're not familiar with Vitas. VITAS is an organization that has 40 years of experience in hospice care, and it's the nation's largest single source provider of end-of-life care. It's a fantastic organization, and we have been working with them for a number of years now, again, in support of seniors. And they partner with us on a lot of public information seminars that we do. So it's just been a tremendous relationship that we have with them. VITAS has roughly 12,000 professionals that provide care to over 19,000 patients daily in 14 states and District of Columbia. So it's a large, very large organization. We also have about 4,800 trained VITAS volunteers that help out in the community. So I can't say enough about VITAS. It's just been a tremendous organization, and Ben, as an example, we've established a tremendous relationship with Ben, and it's just a win-win all the way around for all of us. So we're happy to be doing this. And Ben today, I'm gonna actually have a picture of him. He is a successful businessman. He's an entertainer, a college professor, and a substance abuse counselor. Broad background. He's currently enlisted in the Army Reserve. He enlisted in the reserve at age 33, but also he has active deployment time in Kuwait and Turkey and Iraq, and I'm sure he's going to talk about those kind of experiences with us. As I said, our relationship with Ben has just been great for us, and I think for the veteran community as well. So with that, I'm going to stop yakking now.
Well, Jerry, thank you for that introduction. And yes, I am very honored to be in partnership with Amac Foundation. Matter of fact, I wanted to share with everyone that some of the resources that I'll be discussing here today are also located on the Amac website. And so it's taken me a second as well. I realized when I ended up sharing my screen here, it kind of rearranged some of the things on my side. There we go. All right, now I'm back to normal. All right, so anyway, so yeah, we're going to be talking about the heart of veterans. And this is a question I get a lot in this capacity. There's always the question of what is the culture of the military? What's happening in the military? And one of the things I want to mention is that there's many times, like when I meet with veterans, and I meet with veterans every week. I have a couple different groups. I'm actually a part of different communities every single week. And sometimes I'll have a spouse that'll come in, and I always invite spouses. And I love for spouses to be there, because sometimes when veterans share stories, the spouse is sitting there and they're going, I never heard that before. And there's a reason why that happens, and we're going to talk about that today. So this information, as we move forward, the audience that we're targeting for this are, believe it or not, veteran, as I just shared, families of veterans, but healthcare professionals and others who care for hospice patients and their families. There is CE credit available for those who need it, for healthcare professionals, for VITAS as well. And so here, the goal of this program is just simply to honor veterans' preferences for end-of-life care, and to provide them with the respect and dignity in treatment and quality care. Dignity, that's something that I visit often when I visit with families. Like, for instance, sometimes I'll have a patient who's inside of a room and they'll have to change clothes, or something will have to happen for their care. And I'll say, let me excuse myself. I want to make sure we are honoring this veteran's dignity. And they're like so surprised when I say that, because that has to be at the forefront, because it's part of our culture, which I'll cover. Anyway, looking at the objectives of this, by the end of this presentation, you should be able to have some statistics regarding veterans. No one's asking anybody to be a professional in this, where you just know everything, but just kind of be awareness, like being aware that World War II was long before Vietnam, and there are differences in those wars, which we'll be talking about. And we'll be able to discuss the different impacts of military culture and their experiences. And we'll define forgiveness, which is a cornerstone. And we refer to it here as a cornerstone, but it's referred to as a cornerstone in many other different support organizations and programs that are similar to what I'm going to be sharing with you today. But forgiveness, it is the cornerstone for healing. For veterans, a lot of times it's being able to cope with their experiences, what they dealt with, and what they've been a part of, and maybe losses that they've had to endure, and for different pressures in society may have made it to where they haven't been able to cope with those. And we'll talk about that. All right, so next we're going to talk about war consequences. Now here's a few quotes, and listen to the wording of these quotes. Wars, the outcome of any armed conflict holds not just the promise of peace, but also dark, terrible revelations, questions of justice over the vanquished, and for far too many, the confronting of personal loss. That's one quote. Another quote, every soldier learns in time that war is a lonely business. And what I think is interesting to think about these quotes is that if you consider the military, whether we've had times of draft where people served in that capacity, overall, the military is a voluntary service. So even though this information is out there and people are confronted with this understanding that this could affect my life, this could affect my way of thinking, my experiences, people still volunteer to serve in this capacity. And what does that mean? Why is that necessary? What is the inspiration? And people serve, not only do they serve a term, like it's one thing to say, hey, I enlisted, I wanted to try this out, I felt I wanted to do it, maybe there was education benefits, they do it for 4 years. But that's just not the case anymore. You have people who are serving for 10, 20 plus years. They are making a lifetime service, whether reserve or active duty. So in other words, even in the full knowledge of such quotes, people are willing to do this. And veterans, these are the people that are willing to do this for our country. I read a quote, which I want to make sure I quote it properly. I heard this quote a couple of years back, and it really was impactful to me. It was a quote by Thomas Jefferson. He said, the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. People hear that and still volunteer. They still want to serve our great country. And so we want to talk about that culture moving forward. So U.S. veteran statistics. These are statistics that are interesting to know. 21.9 million living veterans, and that's in 2013. 9.6 million veterans over the age of 65. 2012, estimated 600,000 veteran deaths per year through 2016. Only 4% of deaths will occur in VA facilities. Approximately 40% of the veterans alive today are registered to receive care at the Department of Veteran Affairs. Now, I talk about this a lot when I go to communities. Many people are not registered veterans. And there are resources, as Jerry opened up today. He talked about having VSOs that can help you make sure you're registered. You want to make sure you're registered, because the VA has, in one of my previous videos, I shared they have three different components of their service, whether it's helping with medical care, whether it's helping with financial, or it's helping with burial care. And it's important to be registered so you can take advantage of those benefits that which you have earned as a veteran. Anyway, there are some state-specific statistics I could share. And this is right off the DAV website, but they reported that Florida has 1,525,400 veterans in the state of Florida. There are 1,381,170 male veterans and 144,229 female veterans. It's important to note, as a whole, Florida has the third largest veteran population in the nation, behind California with 1.6 million, 1,681,730 to be exact. And Texas has 1,584,844 veterans. So just looking at those difference from Florida's numbers, I mean, we're talking less than 200,000, 100,000 in some cases. But anyway, to give you an idea, in the state of Florida, that we have a lot of veterans here. And so this information that we're about to go over does impact our state. So combat experience. Each war had its own culture. World War II, Korea, and Vietnam War. And we're going to cover each of these wars as we move forward. So World War II, just to get the whole country was behind this war. To think about this, there was no television coverage. So the American people were shielded from the brutality of it. Even, we hear numbers like 109,000 people died during this, but there's no television coverage. So a lot of that, those traumatic events, they're only within the stories of the veterans themselves. People planted victory gardens. Women worked in munition factories. Young men lied about their age to join the military, and I meet many of these people. The military personnel, they were all heroes. When we came home from the war, they were greeted, oh, heroes welcome. Men stayed in the war for the duration. There were 3 reasons that soldiers came home. They were either injured, the war was over, or they were dead. So we won the war, and America likes winners. That's what it was like for World War II. Then we moved to the Korean War. The Korean War was the America's first limited war. Because President Truman did not seek a formal declaration of war from Congress officially, Americans' presence in Korea amounted to no more than a police action. Any veteran of Korea will tell you that it was war and the conditions were extraordinarily difficult. I would say I have a veteran I'm thinking of from the Korean War, and he was on a ship. He's very traumatized by many of the atrocities that he experienced, and that he had to, even at his own hands, he had to fulfill in his military commitment, and that was during the Korean War. And anyway, when they returned from Korea, they were forgotten, and their dramatic experiences were minimized. So then we move on to the Vietnam War. Now, Vietnam War, very unlike World War II, was on the 6 o'clock news every night. Americans saw the brutality of war up close and personal. The tactics of war changed. There was no more safety behind enemy lines because of the guerrilla warfare. Soldiers served a 1-year tour of duty. So the camaraderie of World War II was not the same in Vietnam. Upon coming home, soldiers were greeted with sticks and tomatoes and called several awful names. U.S. objectives were not achieved. America did not understand the purpose or the mission of the war. There was not a lot of controversy in the U.S. about our presence. There was a lot of controversy. There was a lot of controversy in the U.S. about our presence in the Vietnam War. Young people that went to war expected to become heroes like their fathers of World War II. They came home to a very difficult reality in a country that was not behind the sacrifices they made. A lot of their stories and the trauma became locked up inside of them, and they were never spoken about. Very different. So we look at military culture. Common to all service members in all wars when they enter the military is that they are indoctrinated into a culture unlike any other. One thing I look up when I talk to people about this is you hear words like liberty and you hear words like freedom. And when we look at liberty, matter of fact, for what it's worth, I would like to share the definition of liberty right on Google. It says liberty. Okay. The state of being within, I apologize. The state of being within society from oppressive restrictions imposed by authority or on one's way of life, behavior, or political views. And that's liberty. So what's interesting about understanding liberty, service members, when they join, they sign paperwork, and that freedom is gone. They are now owned by the military. And drill sergeants introduce you to that understanding right away. They take, it's not like, it's a long way from not having your remote control or laptop or cell phone device, when you have some standby time, they take all that from you. You lose your phone, you lose your television time, you lose your computers, laptops, anything that connects you to the outside world. And then immediately you are forced to sleep in an area with maybe 20 other service members, and you have a bathroom with limited capacity, and then you have a shower with maybe 10 shower stalls, and you all have to share that, and that's all you have. And you only have like one type of soap you can use, one type of towel. You have to get specific socks. You can only wear the clothes they tell you to. You can only get up when they tell you to, go to bed when they tell you to. And this structure, under this structure where it sounds, oh man, that's terrible. You want to survive in this as a service member because you're doing it together. And you know the purpose of why you're doing this is because you're wanting to serve something greater than yourself. So this whole process, where you lose everything, is now you are working, and you find yourself working very hard to earn stages of getting some of those liberties and freedoms back. So no, you're never the same. It does change you. And so when you start thinking about what happens to a soldier or a Marine or a seaman or an airman, that conversion into that culture changes them and makes them what they need to be to successfully protect this country and serve in the capacity they need to within the branch that they serve. So they endure physical and emotional pain to prepare them for service and the military potential for war. They are taught to disdain tears and fears. Holding emotions at bay has been ingrained into service members. It impacts the way that many of them lead the rest of their lives. This is interesting. I say this, and actually, working in ministry, I remember when I was younger, I worked in ministry, and they used to say, when you work for a church, the whole family kind of works for the church. And that's because of the culture of being a service person to that community. Well, the same is exactly true in the military. Once you become a servant into the military culture, your whole family has to learn to follow those guidelines, the discipline of that service member, eating a certain way, getting up a certain way, being physical, exercising, having a certain way your house needs to be, or your surroundings, I should say, your environment, because you want a disciplined environment, because this is part of who you become, who you are. And so it does impact the way that they interact with spouses, their parents, their children, and it impacts the way they live and the way they die. I will share with you in this that I do ceremonies, bedside ceremonies for veterans. And I did one not too long ago. And it was a service member who he was not able to, he was suffering with dementia. He was not able to physically see around. His eyes were closed. He wasn't really conscious. And I did a prayer with him, and I did a ceremony for appreciating his service in Vietnam. And as I said to him, I salute you. You are relieved of all duty. I put my hand to my head, and in his state, his arm popped right up, and his eyes still remained closed. It's like he could hear me. And when I said salute, he saluted back at me. I see that, and I'm thinking that's not something that you just are. That's an ingraining of culture, a discipline to a culture. This particular person was a sergeant major, so they were an E9. They had served over 26 years in that culture, and their family was there with me when they all saw this, and they gasped, saying what he had done. And even afterwards, where I would think most people would try to explain this, they said, well, Dad was always very committed to the military. He sensed and knew that you saluted him, and within him, he knew to do that. And isn't that interesting? That family was able to say that. And so that says a lot for what the military culture does bring to a person's life. And these are people that we are serving. So it's good to understand that. So we're going to talk about the impacts of trauma of war. So when a veteran experiences changes in life that can trigger responses or reacts, uh, rather it recreates trauma of the war experience. Now, for some people, like for me, I remember I've been deployed 3 times. My last one was in 2020. But I remember when I first came back, I went back to the Middle East, didn't think anything about it, but I could smell the fuel. Well, the fuel we use is called JP8. Immediately, I started remembering being in a transport vehicle, and I remembered being out in the field when I was a transport operator and doing a recovery mission and serving with other service members. And I remember that feeling of, being in red zones, and that just came back. And it caused me, I'm not going to say I'm ruined or anything like that, but I'm going to say it caused me to pause and just reflect on that. And I had to collect my thoughts because I had a lot of emotions from those experiences that came right back. And I had no control over that. And I thought that's interesting that I would have that. And it made me think about people who had served in other wars. So that's what we're talking about. And of course, it's called a trigger. And people are familiar with it. And this, by the way, this is not just exclusive to war veterans. There are several people who can have traumas that have triggers, but I'm talking specifically about what it's like when you deploy. And these are triggers that bring you back to these places. So anyway, things like changes in their living situation, life-limiting illness can cause trauma to recur. So you got to think about this. For veterans, like the one I just shared, when they're on their own and they experience maybe dementia, and all they have are their memories and their thoughts, they're left to that. So these are areas, many things they say come back. They remember, they'll sometimes talk about children that have moved out or people who've passed on. These are things that come back. So think about it. Do you think that these impacts of trauma from war will come back? Absolutely. And so that's really the point I want to talk about with this slide. So many veterans are able to integrate their trauma into life experiences. Some veterans cannot, and this affects the way that they cope with triggers. Many veterans experience flashbacks, hypervigilance, mood swings, vivid dreams, and they feel as if the war or combat experience is happening all over again. It is important to support veterans through these experiences and be there for them. Be there for them as these events may occur. Listen and open your ears and hearts to the stories of these veterans. So this slide is titled, "Does Not Happen at All." Okay, so it's important to note that not all combat veterans experience trauma. Some veterans have integrated their combat experience while others experience intrusive recollections when faced with trauma and current life experience. It is important to be aware that this may happen to how to react to it. So forgiveness, as I mentioned earlier, that is our cornerstone, but first we're going to talk about reactions and recurring trauma and how forgiveness plays into this. So do not dismiss the platitudes such as, "You were just following orders." It is important to listen and experience what they are feeling as these traumatic events come to the forefront. So, and I've heard this, and I understand in people's greatest effort when they experience a veteran or they see a veteran going through something, they say, "Well, you were just following orders, it's okay." That's really not what is happening. What's happening when they experience that is the need for conversation, the need for connection, the need to talk about it. And that's part right there that I think that's what makes it hard, is because when you're so close to someone and that's happening, the question is really, do you really want to hear? And what effect is that going to have on me if I do hear? Well, let's talk about that. War has robbed soldiers of many things. Veterans can have a very heavy heart as they hold on to the things that they were witnessed, or things that they were a part of, or things that they experienced as soldiers, service members. And these recurring events that happen, they need healing. And that healing, once again, is forgiveness. Veterans frequently have strong feelings about their experiences in combat. Oftentimes, they have not forgiven themselves for killing or for not dying when their fellow soldiers did. To ease their minds, we want to encourage forgiveness within themselves for what they did and did not do. Many thoughts may come to mind, such as killing an enemy was killing another young soldier who may have had a wife or children, or the fact that they were someone's son, brother, or etc. They're still humans. In the environment, whether either you kill or you will be killed, it is important to remember that veterans were surrounded by blood, brutality, and death. So dealing with these, with the residue of guilt may be a major facet of veterans' life. This is why we say forgiveness is the cornerstone of healing. Remember forgiveness. By allowing them to feel forgiven, they can let go of some of the trauma and guilt associated with the experience. As a community, we can play an instrumental part in this as we behold their experiences and stories. By allowing for forgiveness of actions in combat, we can help veterans change their relationship with the past. The combat veteran caregiver. It is very important to encourage the veteran to talk about what really happened. The cornerstone, once again, of healing is allowing the story to be externalized. Listen with not just your ears, but allowing your heart to suffer some of these experiences well. It's crucial. And once again, I realize what I'm saying to people listening to this is like, wow, do I really want to hear that? Well, helping veterans, if you know, this is what they did is not easy. So naturally, the help to help them is not necessarily easy, but there is a reward. So even though these events may have happened 50 to 60 years ago, for veterans recounting the stories, it is, for them, you know, when they tell a story, you can see it in their eyes. They're telling the story as like it just happened yesterday. And I can't tell you how many times I've had family members sit there with me and they're listening like, wow, I haven't heard them talk this much. Usually I'm hopeful if I can get 5 minutes, this is amazing. It's because I'm listening to these stories. Anyway, many times the veteran could feel as if he or she is re-experiencing that trauma. And I have heard spouses say, you know, I never knew that happened to him. In 40 years of marriage, he never spoke of this. And when battle experiences come out, these family members, they experience shock. They can't believe what they're hearing. So when you're a caregiver, you're someone who's just reaching out to care for veterans, this shows you how impactful and how important this service is, to just listen. War-torn veterans. So let's talk about that. As a community, we all have the responsibility to help war-torn veterans cope with their experiences. We need to be aware that listening without judgment is important to the veteran. We all have a key role in helping our veterans come to terms with their experience. Let the stories out. Open the door for veterans. Ask about their experiences. You know, I always try to have a collection of things I talk about when I speak to veterans, and that is the foundation. I always like to say, what did you do for the military? What was your service? I'd like to allow veterans the opportunity to let their stories out, and they're fascinating stories. And but by them talking about this, it helps them to kind of have a placement for those memories. You know, basically coping, having them out. It's good for them. It does help them. Where to go for help? Now, as Jerry started here, there's many resources that are provided right on the Amac website. And there are several veteran centers. Matter of fact, on the website, they have vet centers. I do know about the one in South Florida, Claremont, which I've gone down there to visit quite a bit. But there's several locations of these vet centers. And what these centers are, these are counselors which vets can talk to. This is a service. This is a benefit that is available for veterans. And, you know, taking the time to either ask someone like Jerry or AMAC to find out where these veteran centers are, to where you can recommend them to other veterans. We all need the help in this. Not one person could do this. This is, once again, a community of helping veterans. So you could jot down the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs website, which is www.vetcenter.va.gov, showed it at the top of this slide. So honoring veterans. So just in synopsis, again, our aim today was just to honor veterans, talk about preferences for end-of-life care, and to provide them with respect, recognition, comfort, and compassion that they deserve through dignified treatment and quality care. Everyone should be able to review statistics regarding veterans, as we've talked about today. There's a lot of resources out there. We could learn more about who is in your community, who's in your area, describe cultural differences among the wars, understand the difference between someone coming home from World War II and someone coming home from Vietnam, discuss, or the Korean War. Let's discuss the impact of military culture and experiences, the idea that they work for those liberties, that's how they see it, and that is a way of life. Define forgiveness is the cornerstone of healing. That's encouraging them to forgive themselves, and more than just saying, well, you were following orders, but saying, well, what happened? Well, have you taken the time to forgive yourself? In engaging in that conversation, listening to the stories. Explain issues that combat veteran caregivers may encounter. And finally, to identify the services that are available for veterans and their families. So at this time, normally we would open up for questions, but I also wanted to kind of share a resource that I came across for different trainings of an organization called Psych Armor, which I did share with this with Jerry, which is he's added to the website of Veteran Resources. But Psych Armor, I don't know if y'all could see that, but I'll hold it up to the camera. That's their motto. Anyway, they have courses that you can actually take, which for caregivers, they're also credit hours, they're CE credits available for these courses. But what I like about this course is that they cover 15 primary areas for veterans, which I just want to mention quickly. First one is, we are not all soldiers. You know, I hear this a lot from veterans. They say, you know, people call me a soldier, but I'm a Marine. And it's important to know there is a difference. There's airmen, there's Marines, there's seamen, there's coasties, you know, that's what the nickname we call them. But anyway, and of course, Army, that's the only branch that technically has soldiers. And then reserves are part of the military. I've had people say, well, wait a minute, you're in the reserves. Are you part of the military? And this is interesting to know what that means. We share in the same deployments. Actually, if you look at statistics now, there's actually some statistics out there that they say National Guardmen have actually deployed more than active duty. I don't know how true those numbers are anymore, but I do know people that I serve with right now, me having 3 deployments, I know people that have had 6, 8 deployments and they're reservists. So you live a civilian life, but then you still deploy in your same capacity in those same jobs as a reservist or National Guardman. So not everyone in the military is infantry. Everybody does different jobs. It's just important to know that. So everybody thinks everybody's doing Call of Duty is what I've heard it said too, which I thought was kind of funny because that's a video game. But anyway, but there's tankers, there's artillerymen, there's transportation folks, there's signal support, there's air traffic control, there's pilots, different jobs. Military has leaders. Oh, there's medical. Let me not forget the medical. There's medical professionals on all capacities in the military. Military has leaders at every level in the chain of command. So this is interesting. I have a friend of mine who's a corporal, and he's an E4. And people say, well, wait a minute, you're an officer. I was like, you don't understand. The military culture is all leadership. Everybody's trained to be a leader. I mean, you could have an 18-year-old kid who's in charge of 4 people, and that kid is doing a responsibility which you would consider the equivalent of someone managing a company. They're managing people's lives. They're in charge of whether it be a land or a sea vessel, or they're responsible for those items. It would usually, you know, tanks with items that are within several $1 million. Military is always on duty. That's number 5. The schedule is 24/7. Like even now, I get emails or calls. I could be called into a deployment I do actually, this weekend, I have an advanced training I have to go to. And I don't really have all the time on that or the details to say, but I was just told that I'm going to be going for my family for 3 months. And that's just the way it is. Take pride in appearance and conduct. You know, the idea of getting a haircut, staying clean. This is important to service members. You know, I really don't want to be someplace if I'm not shaved, unless my job for the military is not to shave. We did not all kill someone. I've known several people, even serving in military infantry, they didn't kill someone in their time of service. And maybe sometimes they're just keeping guard. We do not all have PTSD. Some people cope differently. Those of us who do have invisible wounds of war are not dangerous or violent. How am I for time right now, Jerry?
No, you're okay.
Okay, I got 5 more. All right, it is hard to ask for help. This is true. Service members, it's not that it's so much hard to ask for help, but it's the culture to have the mindset that it's your problem. You fix yourself. You know, one of the sayings I remember when I was going through basic, which I've heard now throughout my military career, has been, don't be ate up. Make sure you're squared away. And anytime you sign up for a training or you go or you do anything, squared away means your numbers are good, your health numbers are good, you look right, you can pass your PT test. So this is part of our culture. It's hard to ask for help. So that's what we're talking about. Our military service changes us. It does. It changes the way I look at things in the world. Every time I come back home and I don't see liberties in other countries, I don't see freedom. Certainly not like America. I come home and I see freedom everywhere. The ability to go where you want to get the kind of food you want when you want, to get the kind of clothing you want when you want, do the kind of work you want to do. It's just interesting that, yes, that does affect you, and it causes me to talk about it a lot within my family. Anyway, we differ in how much we identify with the military after we leave active duty. Military service is played out day to day, different person to person. And what this means is to ask a veteran, how do you define yourself now? How has your military service shaped you? Veterans like to talk about this because there's a lot of lessons we learn in a deployment environment or a service environment where it does play out very successfully in our lives. But if we had not learned or been exposed to those things, we would not have been sensitive or knowledgeable of them. Our families served with us. I started off with that earlier, but like even my wife, you know, and I've even shared in specials talking about my wife. Every time I go, I'm gone for a year. She has to take all the responsibilities of running my household or our household, our family. And that reintegration process of allowing me to take over things that she says, oh, I got it. I've been doing this for a year. That's hard, but that's part of veteran service. And that is something we all go through. We would die for our country, and we would die for each other. This is not something we say as members. We believe this, we feel this, we do this when we deploy, when we're serving. It's a mindset that keeps us alive and keeps us strong. It removes that hesitance. You know that you're doing this for the final reason, for the reason of the sacrifice. And the ending comment here, we all made this sacrifice for one reason: to serve something more important than ourselves. And on that note, Jerry, I want to thank you for allowing me to come. It was an honor to be able to share this information. And
thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Very thought-provoking comments. Things that people don't typically think about when they're interacting with veterans, and I think it's helpful to have this kind of perspective. You know, I think it will influence, I think, the way people approach and interact with veterans. So it's very, very helpful. It's just things you don't normally think about. You know, most people just utter that phrase, "Thank you for your service," and don't really think about it. I think this kind of material in the background helps people understand what they really mean when they say that. And with that, we'll conclude for the day. And again, I'll say thank you, and very, very, very informative and very fascinating, really. So again, thank you, and thanks to Vitas. Another example of what I think is a tremendous relationship that we have with that organization, and we thoroughly enjoy working with you and all your folks down there.
Well, thank you so much.
Okay.
Well, the feeling is certainly mutual. Actually, on a regular basis, I use the AMAC website. That resource website is phenomenal because there's so many resources out there in the veteran world that are out there, and veterans don't know where to go. They don't know where they're at. Right. And on that website, it categorizes them by the need. I mean, that's just I don't know why I've not seen that before outside of it being done on the AMAC website. It's just extremely useful.
Yeah, it was the absence of that kind of led us to do that, because we just want to make it easier for people.
Absolutely.
People can hear conversationally about a program. Just pick one, Hugs for Vets. You know, and yeah, it sounds interesting. I might want to know more about that, so they can key in that keyword and it'll come back and tell them exactly what it is and how to get in contact with them. That's really all we wanted to do with it, just make it easier for people. So I'll float that out as an invitation to anybody watching this video, that if you know of any particular programs that you think should be included in this Clearinghouse repository, simply send us a message to info@amac.org, amacfoundation.org, and we'll get it up on the website, lickety split. So, okay, that concludes us for today. Ben, again, thank you, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Feelings mutual. Thanks, Terry.
Bye.
Bye-bye.